It says I'm live. Post a comment. Testing Streamyard. $10:33. Is that the right time? That is the right time. Banners. Well, it's got my name up there. That's good. I'll delete this off probably, y'all. Oh, there's a comment. Phil, what's up? So this thing is live on YouTube, man. I gotta plug this computer in, or it says it's gonna die. All right, now we're rolling. Hey, Wham Bates, what's up, man? I didn't figure anybody would be coming on early on a Monday. It's live? Sweet, man. That's good. So this is from Streamyard, and I've got to learn how to like bring people in, copy this stuff, like do a YouTube or a podcast kind of situation. So that is what I'm doing today. I tried the other day, but I couldn't get it to work. And yeah, just a test. Look at there, Phil. Your comment was highlighted. Now, how did I do that? Oh, did I just put the cursor over it? Can I do this? Show. Oh, see? Look at there. I can highlight my own comment. I can highlight my own comment. Oh, well, wham. See, look at this. This is cool, man. I'm enjoying this. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a podcast, but well, I can just bust it down since we're here talking about it. I've got this cool microphone that plugs into this laptop or this iPad Pro. So audio, I've learned, is critical. If you have bad audio, you're not going to keep people's attention very long. So I've got a couple things in the field going on. One of the things, just fishing in general. But I could set that iPad Pro up on the center console, and I could run a mic like this, or a mic, put this on a boom, or I can get audio onto a boat. So if I can get audio onto a boat, then I can get audio like onto the pond or fishing or whatever. Kind of coming at it from those ideas in doing something different than what everybody else is doing. I think a podcast, even if it's just say Pondside at Sugar Hill Outdoors or Pondside wherever, that's a more interesting environment. I also think too that having multiple cameras, one of them is the 360 camera. That's a good camera to have because it's just one camera on a tripod that's recording everything. So I could have it right here and be fishing, over this camera, and with a 360 camera right behind it, I'd be able, I'd be capturing anything that happened on the water as well. And maybe do like a podcast like that, where you're doing a little fishing and they'll talk. Maybe it's just live bait fishing or something that's, not so much casting and so much stuff, but just something a little more interactive with the pond and with the people who own the ponds, like Clint. I want to get Clint on here. And my friend Mickey Wilson has a lot of good content that he can add on here. And a couple biologists that I want to have on here. The podcast, that's a good idea, Wham. Let's show that. All right. See, this is looking better just by the minute. 4 folks on a Monday morning. I thought about, what's up, Phil? Phil said, yeah, see, exactly, Phil. We should do that. We're gonna do that. As a matter of fact, just mark it down. Um, as a matter of fact, we could probably what's your schedule looking like over the next couple weeks? Because I've got to get back up there anyway. Um, got all the holiday stuff out of the way, and that would be great, interesting new content. Um, especially for like YouTube, people haven't seen that. I haven't seen anything like that. What we did on YouTube before. I don't know if you want to give away all your secrets, but Phil's got some good trout fishing secrets for the Chattahoochee. And if you want to go catch a lot of trout there, and believe me, I know about the Chattahoochee too, because I fished there from the time I was a little boy. Some of the earliest fishing memories I have are chunking corn and worms with my dad from the edges of the Chattahoochee River in Atlanta. That was a thing. That is still a thing in some spots. Usually it's fly fishing though. It's usually not too much corn and worms anymore. But no, one of no, that was the best day I've ever had on the hooch. An eye-opening experience with Mr. Phil. Just brilliant ideas all the way around on how to attack that fishery. Oh man, you know what happened when I was with Phil? I got stung. And I'm not even sure what I got stung by, Phil, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't bees. It must have been ants. It must have been ants in that bush, not bees in that bush. But I've been having some like autoimmune problems even since then. Now, even weird things happening. I've changed my diet. I've done a bunch of different things to try to, live a cleaner lifestyle. But yeah, remember I jumped in the river. I literally jumped in the river because I thought I put my head into a bee's nest. We were on the bushes. I think we got snagged or something over on the edge, and something just immediately started to bite me, sting me, And with all of my autoimmune problems I've been having the last few years, that's bad for me. Can turn into a bad situation, especially stings, where you're breathing and stuff. So that cut our cut our date. Oops. Stupid things falling out. That cut our fishing day by several hours. But nothing happened autoimmune wise, which was interesting. Which and later in like dealing with the injuries and the wound care that and involved the multiple. Took a 6 or 8 stings by something. I kind of felt like maybe that they were ants. Yeah, dude, I did catch a nice brown trout that day too. Yeah, we bugged out after that. Phil's just recounting the day there in the chat, and Wham, check out Wham, man. I'll keep highlighting Wham. It's good advertising too, man. That's the thing. If the channel gets real popular, we can post these things up, and people will see it. That's good advertising for people. Yeah, I caught a big old brown that day on the hooch. And Phil has caught some big old browns. I've seen some pictures of some browns that he's caught over there. And we could talk about that too, man. Like it's been enlightening talking to Phil about that stuff because I didn't know it. I have not been paying attention to what I should be. I've kind of been focused on one thing in pond management and stuff and got away from the hooch. I don't live near it anymore. So, your attention gets deferred to other places. But there's a big population of brown trout that are reproducing that they wouldn't be. People call them natives, but they're technically not natives. Technically, that'd be naturalized. Brown trout are native to Europe. They're not even native to North America. But um, something changed in the thickness of the eggs and then in the way, because what you've got in the Chattahoochee back there is it's tailwater fishery to Lake Lanier, and that tailwater is power generation source. So it's a big turbine that generates like an alternator on a truck. They open up the they open up the water at the bottom of the lake, and it runs through there and spins a turbine and creates electricity for the town right there. And it's a pretty big town right there around Beaufort, Georgia. So it's an electrical generating type of operation there. And because it pulls the water so deep from the lake, trout can survive in the river behind the lake artificially. Normally, the trout would never be there, be too warm for them. So that's called, for anybody who's new or maybe not unfamiliar with these terms, that would be like called a tailwater trout fishery. And the tail meaning kind of like a tail on a big lake. Like you have a big body of water and then like a long tail. If you looked at it on a map, that's kind of the idea behind that term. So you'll see tailwater fisheries all over the United States, even in Montana, where there's incredible natural trout fishing. You'll still have like man-made reservoirs for, say, like water supply or different things, and create tailwater fisheries. One of the great tailwater fisheries that I've visited many times, the Bighorn River in eastern Montana. The Bighorn is a special place. It's tailwater. And I guess to put something into your mind to remind you about where that is, it's where General Custer's last stand. It's where they killed him. It's on the Crow Indian Reservation where you can camp and fish the river there. And man, it's a special place. A lot of good insects, a lot of good insect hatches, and thousands and thousands of trout per mile. But in talking to Phil, the Chattahoochee now with their naturalized brown trout reproduction also has thousands and thousands of trout per mile. But the difference is the water quality in the river in Georgia versus the water quality and substrate and habitat in the rivers out west. They're two completely different things. For one, Georgia doesn't have any limestone. Forestry operations from 300 years ago really did a bad job. They didn't understand how to cut trees properly. Did a lot of timber cutting in Georgia, cut all the trees down, and had a lot of topsoil runoff. There's a place in Georgia called the Little Grand Canyon in middle Georgia, kind of down around Columbus, and it looks like the Grand Canyon because of the erosion problems that were created back then. So that's kind of how the forestry school got started. That's where I went to school at University of Georgia. It wasn't long after that, but oh yeah, good Lord, Phil's right, man. He's mentioning there's a lot of comments going by I'm not even paying attention to yet. Anyway, the thing going on in the Chattahoochee is kind of similar to what's going on in some of the ponds. And now I'm seeing these trends in a lot of different places across the country with other colleagues and stuff that I talk to, in that you're seeing higher numbers of game fish in a river. It would be per mile. In a trout in a pond, it would be per acre. I just went on a pond survey this week and saw that very high number of 11 to 14-inch bass. And I have my relative weight chart. I made those numbers red for a reason. They're always high on 11 to 14-inch bass. Those are the ones you have to watch. And so when I went to the pond and I caught 8 or 10 bass, and all of them were between 11 and 14 inches, it's a cookie cutter thing. It's the same show over and over and over again in ponds a lot of times. But the point being is the river can, although more complex and diverse, too many brown trout per mile is going to result in longer, skinnier trout. and we would then be in the exact same dynamics fish population wise, in that some harvest of some of those trout would free up food for the remaining trout and actually create a fishery that had larger fish. Although I don't think in trout fishing we'll ever see a day that people harvest very many fish anymore. Just an idea, just food for thought for the five of us now. Hey, welcome aboard, whoever you are. For the whole five of us with nothing better to do at 5:43 a.m. And actually, I've got a couple things written out we can talk about if we're going to hang out. Oh, Wham Bates didn't know they were native to Europe. Look at the knowledge drop. Just Nagasaki knowledge drop. No, man, actually, I didn't know that either. I had to write a paper on fishing, on a game fish. I had to do a presentation. It was like a half an hour presentation. And we was threatened at gunpoint by my professor to not do it on largemouth bass. I was threatening bodily harm if I wrote the paper about bass. And actually threatened everyone every year about, he didn't want to hear anymore about largemouth bass. He was not a bass fisherman. He did not teach anything about bass. It was an ichthyology class. It was a class about fish. But, interesting side note, it was a class about fish where you're not allowed to talk about largemouth bass. So my paper was on brown trout. And thanks to Dr. Helfman, we have that tidbit of information that we can learn here today. Brown trout are native to Europe. And sometimes you'll hear them called sea trout over there. It'll be the same things as steelheads here. The browns will run out the river into the ocean and come back, and they'll just be ginormous. See, trout, look at Phil, man. Let's throw one up for Phil. See, that's what I'm talking about, man. You can talk to Phil, you learn stuff. It's a wealth of information. Phil should start I found this frog too, boys. Have you seen this little jackal frog? Let's see, where's my camera? So first thing out on the frog from old guy perspective, look at the nice neon, right? That is interesting. I like that. It's a scaled down size frog. It's not very big, right? It's not a huge frog. It does have shorter tails, but look what it's got back here. Look at this guy. And it's actually two guys. It's a split deal. They don't spin, but they do split like that. Little kind of blades back there on the frog. I like blades on anything. See, it's got its own little post too, so you can kind of bend it and adjust them a little bit too. That's a jackal something. Kaeera or something. But frog fishing around here, around these pads, is kind of ridiculous. The numbers of frogs that's going on down there. So, although historically not a big fan of frog fishing, it's actually pretty fun down the hill here. You can get some cool bites doing that. So, kind of become more of a frog fishing fan as I've lived in Central Florida. Yes, Phil is absolutely correct on that as well. Huge. We might as well just post all this stuff up. This is good stuff. All right, so I think I can split the screen with a guest. Okay, that's what that button does. This is a spotlight. Ooh, I wonder if I could share the screen, because that would really help too. Yes, Phil, it is two Colorado blades, but they only go like this. They don't spin like that. They seem to kind of have this kind of an action, which, jumped out at me as well. I'm like, okay, so not only do we have two round blades, but we also have, like, maybe they're designed to kind of chop down more than spin around. Not really sure how it's going to look in the water. Definitely checking that one out, because again, sometimes it's just that subtlest little difference in things, And when I saw blades on a frog, I was like, oh man, that's Yeah, I'm with you, Phil. I like the neon head too because these old eyes are struggling. You know who else? Oh, well, that's a jackal. I had some good luck on the what is that thing called? It's a mega bass. It floats high in the water. It has an orange back on it. It's a swim bait. It looks like a bluegill. It's palm shaped like a bluegill. It's in the boat. That's why it's not. It's I fish with it. Oh, what is that thing called? The Battalion, I think. Have you guys seen that Battalion swim bait by Mega Bass? That thing it floats high in the water and it has a dorsal fin that'll stick up out of the water. And you can get one that's got that color on it, like that chartreuse green or yellow, whatever they call that. And I really like that lure because you can see it as well. But the other thing I like about that lure is subsurface with just some real pops. You can get that. You can really get some like almost like super fluke kind of darting and erratic action out of a hard bait, and works good on like a swim bait rod. You just bulk up to a swim bait rod that's got a good moderate break. That one I got, Mike Buca's rod, is perfect for it. That's what I caught a couple fish, 3-4 pound fish down on the mm, what is that? The ledge, I call it. What is that ledge? That ledge is the entire length of this lake. They dug a barge canal because it was designed to have barges cut across Florida instead of having to go all the way around. But I guess the politician whose idea that was got voted out or whatever, and the project got stopped. And they built Rodman. They built all this stuff. They built the canal to right here, and it ends literally right here in Rodman Reservoir. So what you've got is like a 7-mile ditch out there where they just dug a ditch and piled the dirt up all the way down the lake. So it's great, deep water access, habitat, pads grow on it. There's some brush on it. It's beautiful, but it's just so much. It's 7 freaking miles. So good luck. You got to just kind of go down it and find the fish. But I was fishing out there right where it ended, and caught a couple 3-pounders on that. I think it's called the Battalion on Mega Bass, and you can kind of mark down the numbers of fish that you catch in Florida on one hand. I mean, on the baits that you get those fish to bite. You can throw the tackle box out there all day and not catch anything. But like a rattle trap, a speed worm, a frog, I can add that Battalion to it, and a jerk bait. And I usually start with a jerk bait because you can have. I've had some real good days on jerk bait, over 10 fish. Nothing real big, but still, it's pretty good. Jerk bait's been the most productive. Super fluke, black super fluke though. No other color but black if I caught a fish, and it's hard to find black super flukes. But yeah, Wham. Texas rig stuff. I've done lizards. I've done a few oversized zoom lizards and got a few strikes on the Texas rig. And you know what else has worked out there is Texas rig Magnum, that big worm that Zoom makes. That I can't think of the name of it right now. The biggest worm they make, the 10.5-inch super mag, big mag, whatever, in California 420 color. I caught a few fish on that, and there's a plum apple in that zoom color that works everywhere. Like that plum apple color, if you can find that, it doesn't even matter what it is, just buy it. That color works good. And if you really want to go out there and catch a bunch of fish, and part of the problem, I think, with why these fish are so bait specific, and they're highly pressured by professional fishing guys with live bait, you know. And it's not that big of a lake. It's just like 9,000, 10,000. So there are times when you can look out there. I can just go to the dock and look and be like, guide. You see 10 boats, 9 of them are guides. So I think that that type of pressure, because the guides are on them. You know, the guides work together too. And tennis, you know, it's how they make money. I'm not hating on the guides at all. I'm good for them. Do what you want. But where that challenges us is the best water's picked over by the best fishermen, and it's being done with live bait and not with tackle. Okay. So that's the double puncher there for Rodman and for Central Florida lakes in general. There's a lot of guides on all these lakes, not just this one. So to me though, I like it. Like, um, I'll throw that up and get to it. I like the challenge of it. Like I got down here and it's been tough, you know, and I should be fishing right now, honestly, but I'm learning YouTube stuff and Streamyard, and how to invite people is my next thing. I need to be talking less and adding more. At least I got it to go on live. That's a good thing. But anyway, the challenge in Rodman is the pressure is, you know, you're going up against fish that are pressured with golden shiners, big ones, nice ones, live bait, and hammered too. I mean, these guys are having 100 fish days sometimes when the fishing fires up. So I think the fish become very aware of boats. I think the fish become very aware. I've noticed that the good guides their boats have all that carpet, that, you know, specialized carpet, sound dampening stuff. I know it's more comfortable, but I honestly think it's more stealth too. And I think that matters very much in Rodman Reservoir. I think longer casts when the water's clear matters very much in Rodman Reservoir. I guess let's put it this way. Rodman Reservoir is the bass fishing equivalent to a Western trout river. I know Phil would know what I'm talking about there, where, and not a well-known, like a tourist trout river either. Kind of one of those trout rivers that the locals know about and they don't talk about, and it just is kind of back there and they go to it when it's good, you know? And that's what Rodman reminds me of. The fishermen that are here are excellent. They're fished world class, you know, guys that fish for money, guys that fish for a living. Yeah, those guys can fish. Especially the guides, the computer grinder every day, go out there and just grind that place up. Hey, I say good for them, man. It's public water, you know, that's what it's for. If you can go catch 100 fish a day out there on shiners, do it. There's a phone call coming into my phone. It says it's unknown though, so it's probably not somebody that I want to talk to. All right, let's look at this real quick since my train of thought is broken anyway. It says banners. Folder name. Banner. Create a folder. There are 0 banners. Create a banner. Okay. Add a banner. Scroll across. Add a banner. Okay. You just do that. Oh, look at there. Okay, how do you take it off? Hide. Okay. And then what does that do? What does that do? You can edit the banner. Hit return. Then you hit show. Yes, you can. All right. So you can scroll it. Is there different ways you can scroll? What if you don't scroll? What does that look like? Right on. Yeah, it's a news ticker, isn't it? And then I can just go back to clicking on you guys. All right. I can just go back to clicking on you guys. Oh, Phil's on the Chattooga now. Yeah, dude, there's some nice fish over there. Faux show. There's some nice fish around Georgia these days. Okay, so I can do a banner and I just go to here and I can type whatever I want. Take YM. And Phil are cool. Type whatever I want, right? You can make it scroll. I can save it. I can show it. Yep. All right. So I got to think about what I would add right there. Let's edit that. What is toxicity? How about that? It's one of the things I have written down. What is toxic? Because I was talking about fish yesterday, or talking about treating ponds yesterday. Yeah, there we go. What is toxic? So I can keep myself on track too. Hey, that's not bad. So what do I mean by what is toxic? Like name something you can put into the water that's not toxic. You know, that's how our teachers approach that with us. Name something you can put into your body that's not toxic. Everybody kind of thought about it for a minute. Like, air can be toxic. What about water? Well, you can definitely, if you drink like 2 gallons of water in an hour, that'll kill you. So water's a toxic chemical. So when you think about it that way, toxicity has to do with the levels at which your whatever organism is being exposed to it. It has to do with the levels at which they're being exposed to. That's what toxicity is. Everything is toxic, framed the right way. So with that in mind, when we're using, say, algicides in the water, well, most pond algicides are copper based. Copper is a heavy metal, and heavy metals are toxic to fish, and heavy metals are toxic to algae. So where you'll see a lot of people making mistakes is they don't understand the difference between an algae and a plant. And sometimes in ponds, that can be really tricky with some of the things that we've been looking at the past few days, like water meal, stuff like that. The plants do look like algae. I even had one guy come on here and say, hey, where I'm from, that's called algae. I said, Google it, look it up. It's not algae, it's a plant. So where you'll mess up then is people will go to the store and they'll say, hey, I got this algae all over my pond. And the guy at the store says, okay, well, you need a pond algicide. They buy a pond algicide, they go spray it, doesn't do a thing because they're spraying an algicide on a plant. They need a herbicide, not an algicide. Herbicides kill plants, algicides kill algae. Generally what happens after that is they don't figure that out, and they go buy more and they spray more algicide onto their pond. Again, that's usually copper based. Again, that's toxic to fish. And again, since it doesn't kill plants, it's not doing a thing to what they're trying to spray it on. And they over apply and they dose their fish with copper and they have fish kill due to copper toxicity. I've seen that one play out probably 50, I don't know, maybe 75 times in 30 years. It happens a couple times a year. So what is toxic? Scrolling across the screen down there, copper is extremely toxic to fish at low levels. So that gets also into what kind of water quality do you have in your pond? Do you have a lot of limestone? Are you out west? Are you in the Midwest? Is there lime? Is there hardness? Is there total alkalinity in the water? Do you have like 250 parts per million? Do you have one of those things at your house where you have to like soften the water to keep the lines from getting calcified because there's so much calcium in the water? Okay, there's places in the country that are like that. In Georgia and in the Southeast and most places around here. Now, Florida's not like that. Florida, There's a lot of limestone in the water here where I live, but not very far north. You just go up into Georgia. It's acidic soil. There is no limestone, and that changes everything up. Especially from a toxicity wise, because the limestone in the water is a buffer. The water's not very buffered in Georgia. So anything like copper is extremely toxic in Georgia. It's like you don't need nearly as much to kill fish with copper in Georgia as you do other places in the country. I ran into that. The guy that bought my company had to work there a few years, and I got orders from, he was kind of having a power trip, I guess, or something, trying to tell me exactly what I was going to be doing. And he ordered me to go spray like 10 gallons of copper in like a 3-acre pond. You're going to go do this. You're going to go do it the way I say to do it, that kind of thing. And I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'll do exactly what you say, but I'm not going to spray it at that rate. And the guy hit the ceiling on me. He's having a power trip, and insubordination, I guess, threatened insubordination. And I was like, man, I understand where you're coming from, and I understand why you're frustrated, but the problem is I said, what is your average water hardness in the ponds that you guys manage? He couldn't even answer that. He didn't even know that. So I was like, all right, so since you don't even know what the average water hardness is, when you talk to somebody up there who does, I said, I bet it's above 200 parts per million, and you can get away with adding that much and not killing all the fish in the pond or lake. But here in Georgia, it is like 17 parts per million. It's the other end of the spectrum. It is low. And if you dump that much algaecide into a 3-acre pond in Georgia, you are going to kill all the fish in it and some of the fish back there behind it. We can't do that here. That's a bad mistake. And that is going to lead to us being sued and having to stock fish and coming up with stupid excuses. So I told you that story to make a point about toxicity. What works in one place, it would work in Georgia, but I guess you're going to catch dead fish from it too. So having somebody experienced helps in these situations. And that's where I find the biggest disconnect. Because like for me as a professional, it was highly regulated. I'm not looking at the comments, sorry. Wham Bates is saying that they have softer water. Yeah. You have softener for your water. So you have hard water, you see. So they're in the opposite end of the world than I'm in right now. So if Wham had a pond in his backyard, and we know they have water softeners, to keep the water in their house working and not calcifying all the pipes up and everything, we can come to the conclusion that the water hardness in that area is elevated. So if he had a pond to treat, we can automatically assume that when you look at the label of like an algaecide, it'll say like you can apply like 1 to 2 gallons per acre or 0.1, to 2 gallons. There'll be a range per acre that you don't want to exceed 2 gallons. On algaecide, it's usually 2 gallons, and it depends on the formulation of the algaecide. It says on the label, anytime you put anything in your pond, read the label first. You can get some help from me, or you can get some help from your county extension agents. There's one in every county. They can help walk you through it too. And the point being is I see in my career, I saw more misuse of herbicides, not by like guys like me, because that cost me money and I was watched by the government like a hawk anyway. It was the guys who were trying to do it themselves. And like I said, maybe misidentifying water meal as algae and spraying an algicide on something that wasn't going to work. And being confused and being frustrated too, because you're spending money and it takes time, it's hard work, and you're not getting any results. But that was where I saw the biggest misuse of aquatic herbicides was in that the herbicides are not anyone can buy them. The only persons that are being tracked and monitored are the guys with the licenses who are spraying those chemicals for a living. Oh, the EPA guys would come out, the state of Georgia guys would come out in my house every 2 years. It's usually once a year, twice a year in Georgia. Um, and just check, make sure there's not stuff leaking everywhere. Make sure you keeping your records right. Make sure all those things are, and they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but like I said, then I turn around and get a phone call from a guy who dumped 5 pounds of copper sulfate into a half an acre pond. And it's like, okay, that was bad. You shouldn't somebody be watching that for stuff like that, but there's nobody there. So that was part of the idea of doing this, that maybe I can be like that guy that goes, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't put 5 pounds of copper sulfate in that pond." There is a big difference between rotenone and limestone, Phil. Okay, I can lose the banner. That was my toxicity thing. So we can hide the banner again. Look at me go. Hey, man. Phil's coming back through. He's bug study on the hooch, and there was a noticeable decline in aquatic bud life. Well, big surprise there. There's also a noticeable trend in runoff with pesticides from yard care. Yes. And that is another interesting study that I came across. In one guy was doing phosphorus loading stuff. Um, and he did it about let's see, just like what Phil's talking about, been studies being done on different areas, right? So you look at runoff, you're grabbing water samples of runoff behind a community, but one community is a golf course community and literally has multiple functional golf courses in that community. And the other community is just regular folk, cut their own grass type of people. No professional, maybe a few people in the community have professional lawn care. Most people just do it themselves. There was less phosphorus runoff behind the highly manicured golf course community, where everything was professionally managed. All the curbs, all the stuff was done by landscapers. All the whole golf course was done by a landscape supervisor for the golf course. Golf course communities, then generally all of the properties are also professionally managed by professional landscapers. The nutrient loading into the water, into the creeks and golf course water hazards was much less than it was in the places where it was just quote unquote natural, where it was just regular people's yards. And it was a bunch of different reasons why, but if you think about it, just like the situation I just described, the professional golf course guy is not over applying anything. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a professional. That's what he does. And he's grown thick, nice, lush grass, right? That lush grass needs nutrients. So any animal droppings, any phosphorus, any kind of nutrients that go down after he's boosted it with his fertilizer application, that is being used. There's a much richer, denser plant filter in place on the professionally managed property versus the guy's yard who's patchy with grass and he's got 3 dogs in his backyard. And then that brings me back to pet waste. Man, you want to start finding where there's a big problem running off into our water supplies, into all our creeks, into all our yards, in every single place. Yeah, pet waste. Everybody needs to be picking up their dog crap. Like the spikes in bacterial counts due to pet waste runoff. Man, I've done a few tests like that, and it is stupid what happens after it rains due to dog poop. Yes, Phil, you are correct. It is a much more closely managed thing on terrestrial stuff. But I found it interesting that the water coming off those places was actually really clean, and, you would I mean, everybody does. Every time I tell about that study, they're like, "Man, the go behind the golf course is gonna be a chemical-laden pit of death," and it's like, not, you know? Those guys are actually really good at, 1, staying on top of things, just like in pond management. If you stay on top of your algae problems, your weed problems, whatever they may be, wherever they happen to be, if you get educated about them, you learn to notice, all right, here they come again. You notice the cycle of it. Um, if you're just a little bit proactive, as soon as you start seeing stuff pop up, you can greatly reduce the amount of products that you have to use in the environment to control those things. To use a real time example, Sugar Hill Outdoors, that is a brand new pond. Usually, brand new ponds have algae problems. It's just a natural thing. There's a lot of nutrients in the ground and stuff. And I know that. So I had a couple different algicides, ready and in place. And as soon as I saw the algae popping and starting to come up, I put a treatment down. And kind of the problem in ponds is there's no really such thing as a preventative or a what do they call that? A pre-emergent, like in your yard, you put down that stuff for pre-emergent weeds. That doesn't happen in ponds. There's no such thing. You wouldn't want chemicals lingering in the water that long anyway. So you kind of do, it's a chemical, it's a contact thing. Like, as soon as you see it, that's when you need to start treating it. But if you start treating it as soon as you see it, you can use a lot smaller amounts, and you can use those amounts a lot more frequently. But I have found you don't really have to if you kind of stay in front of it with small amounts. Every pond's a little bit different, but it's always been really important to me to use the smallest amount of product in the environment as possible. I always kind of felt like that was part of my job. Not only did it help save me money, but again, I think that's just having morals or ethics or something. I don't know. Anyway, I got StreamYard working, boys. Okay, there's an invite button. Okay, so you copy that invite button. Anybody want to try to come on live and have a conversation real quick while I'm doing this? Or I can just do it formally later. Private chat. I bet private chat has to do with that backstage stuff, because I have done this a few times with other folks. I've just never operated it from this end. I've already been on here 48 minutes running my yap. I learned how to do a banner, and I definitely learned how to highlight comments, which is cool. And to touch on Phil's deal here, rotenone. Rotenone is a ground up plant from South America, and we use it to kill fish populations thoroughly and quickly. And how it works is that plant goes into the water, the fish's gills get exposed to it. The rotenone goes into the fish and binds to the red blood cell in the blood, replacing oxygen. So actually, rotenone will suffocate your fish because it'll neutralize their blood's ability to hold oxygen, and that will kill them. Rotenone does detox in the environment. It depends on the temperature of the water. If you put it down in the winter, you're going to have rotenone in the water for a long time. If you put it down when it's warmer, it breaks down, and depending on how warm, week, 2 weeks. So the idea behind it is you drain the pond down, preferably dry, then you don't have to worry about the rotenone. But if you have puddles left, you have to treat those puddles. You don't want any fish surviving when you restock a pond. And the reason is you are going to want to buy the smallest fish from the fish hatchery, because when you see that bill, it can be considerable. Smaller fish are cheaper. Smaller fish save you a lot of money. If you have any larger predatory fish existing in the pond, when you stock the smaller fish, you instantly mess up the balance of the fishery. This works in stages. And the first stage is you put the forage in and you let them grow, and then you put small predators in and you let them feed into that forage. If you have predators in place already, that's where you drop the ball. That's a big mistake. That's where you'll see a drain and restock fail. When they drain the pond, but they didn't remove all the predator, they didn't remove all the crab, they didn't remove all the bass, they didn't remove all of something. And then when the pond fills back up, they don't have fishing like Sugar Hill. They have a mess. They have like, what is going on? This is terrible. They failed to eradicate the fish population initially when you have a drain and restock problem. On the flip side of that, if you drain it and you do eradicate the fish population properly, you just about can't mess up the fishing for about at least 5 years. And then it becomes how good a pond manager you are. But stocking a fewer bass per acre, you'll get it out to about 8 years of really fantastic bass fishing anyway. But I hear people walking around. I live in a place that's so quiet that if anybody makes a sound, they're there. I'm on the edge of the forest out here. Mostly just kind of like, we have like a little like retirement community pretty much out here, but most of the people, there's half the people come in just for like hunting and fishing and then leave. It's a cool community though. Phil's asking me if I know the biologist at Big Canoe. What is his name, man? I might not. I don't know. I used to know some dudes who worked over there. Big Canoe's a big, like, a lake over there. Now I can really hear people talking. I don't know what they're doing out there. Go out there and see. Something's happening in the neighborhood. Hey, 5 folks, and I'm 52 minutes in. Wow, another hour. Yeah, it is a unique Highland Lake setup, man. That place has been around forever, too. Wham Bait's coming through. Silly question. I doubt it. There's no silly questions. Not really. How deep would a pond have to be for bluegill to survive? Man, I would be surprised if you don't have bluegill up there. I don't know the northern range on bluegill, actually. That's something I'm going to have to go look up. Now, see, if I knew how to split the screen, we could go look that up right here, couldn't we? Ooh, how do you do that? What's this? Picture in picture. The reason I say that, Wham, is bluegill are like tough, man. They can survive the cold. I just don't know how far they go. You have bluegill? Yeah, I would think you would. But that's another good point. Somewhere up there, they're going to end. I have to figure that out. That's a good question. Oh, here's a tablet right here. Look it up. Down goes the light, man. Actually, the light does a little better job from down there, it looks like, doesn't it? Let's see. What's the range of bluegill? Testing the limits of my knowledge with this Canada talk. Oh, wow. Well, no, that's north. Eastern half of the U.S., from the Great Lakes and the Mississippi Valley eastward, southeastern Canada to northeastern Mexico. So yeah, somewhere in Canada, the range ends for bluegill, which is interesting. I never thought about it that way. I just think of them as like this omnipresent. See if I can get my light back up here. Omnipresent bait fish all the time. But they're not. different places have different things going on, which is cool. Oh, thinking about a backyard pond? Yeah, man. So, fish survival under the ice. Phil brings up a good question. Can they survive being frozen? Frozen solid? No. But how fish survive under the ice is how they survive really all the time. And where ice pack becomes dangerous is not the thickness of the ice, because light can still penetrate through the ice, right? Um, it's when the ice gets covered in snow. That's where you have your problems. And this is textbook stuff. I don't have any experience with snowpacked ice, you know, never have. I've only actually even stood on one pond one time in Atlanta. It had enough for me to stand on the ice for a second. I did, and I got off. But what happens is the light will penetrate the ice, still goes down into the water. There's still plankton down in there doing their thing in the wintertime. Different species of plankton survive, 24/7, 365. And there's light populations of plankton doing their thing, photosynthesizing and creating the oxygen underneath the ice. So that's how the oxygen production gets there, even though the surface water isn't even being exposed to the atmosphere. So it's that photosynthesis of the plankton still. It's just under the ice that happens. So where that gets you in trouble, though, is when the ice gets packed with snow and the snow blocks the light from going through the ice. Now you've got troubles, right? That's how you have kills under your ice. And then you'll also have a winter turnover, like when things thaw back out in the springtime. There's another whole processes of turnover that I've actually haven't thought about it in so long I couldn't fully explain it. But you have a different in around here, we have the turnover in the fall. Up there, they have 2. They'll have one in the spring, one in the fall, and it's just come the freezing and all that nonsense. But you have a higher risk of fish kills, I think, because of the ice cover and just because of the nature of that. Didn't have too many fish kills in Georgia, a few here or there, but turnovers in October usually. Yeah. I forget how it works on the ice. It's like maybe the runoff from all the snow coming in doesn't have oxygen in the water. No, it should from coming across the ground. I don't know, man. It's been too many years ago for me to think about limnology on northern lakes. I don't have to pass that test anymore. But we can just figure out turnovers are easy to figure out. Usually the colors of the lakes completely change. Oxygen levels completely change. Fish populations go crazy for a while. And then things stable back out. And, you know. Yeah, Wham, that's the thing. The snow-covered ponds, I think, is where, when you have a more open water situation, or I guess when your water is more open to wind. Yesterday's example, I did a little short on it on watermeal, a little seedy kind of a plant. That's always on pond. That's usually on ponds smaller than 3 acres, and it's usually because those ponds smaller than 3 acres are tucked back like in a forested type area where there's trees all around them, and there's no wind on the water. You won't notice watermeal nearly as bad. You'll see it on bigger lakes. That and its cousin duckweed, which are both a nasty pain on little ponds, stop becoming a pain on bigger ponds because the wind and wave action beats them back. And it's not that they're not there. It's just there's not enough of it to cause any problem and cover the whole lake. like it does the whole pond. Um, a real good difference in, how, sometimes ponds and lakes are managed differently. Yeah, Wham's got his bass seasons. Yeah, it is good to know about light penetration, I think, man. Like, because if you did have a pond, especially a small one that you could do something about it with just like it's like a simple blower or something, when if the ice gets too covered, you can maybe do something about it, you know. I would think too that it's not like you would have to keep the entire pond clear of snow, but as long as you understand that, yeah, keep as much of that ice exposed to the surface, blow that stuff off there. That's going to help your fish. That's going to help your oxygen problem. That's going to help your oxygen problems and ultimately help your fish survive the winters up there. Yeah, ice fishing seasons. But there's another good example too. Those ice fishermen, unless what I see on TV and what I hear, those guys keep a lot of fish. Those guys are not going out there fishing and releasing fish as much as some of the other fishermen. And then look at the health of the lakes up north, with the harvest, the wintertime harvest, people keeping and eating some fish out of them. They are having healthier fisheries than I'm accustomed to seeing. I see some very healthy fish coming out of Canada, coming out of the northern lakes. And it's because their population balances are more balanced. Maybe I should just go live every day. All right. I still don't see. It says cinema, picture in picture, screen shift, news. I think I have to have somebody else on. Good question, Phil. Is it a more complete food chain? It's a different food chain for certainly. So when we're talking about the lakes that I've been accustomed to electrofishing and managing, we are discussing lakes where the largemouth bass are the top end of the food chain. And if there's something competing with the top end predator, it would be crappie or maybe like large channel catfish or flathead catfish or green sunfish would go in and compete with our bass populations in those areas of the country, southeastern United States, that kind of area. But once you start getting north to, I don't know, I guess Ohio, so wherever the northern pike start coming in, you start getting populations of larger predators than bass or predators that can feed on largemouth bass. So then you have a shift in the population dynamics because of that, because the bass now, instead of being the top predator, become part of the forage base. So then the interesting side note, though, it really doesn't matter as long as we understand that, because then the same population dynamics apply to the pike as would to the bass. Say if it's a northern pike place or a muskie, maybe muskie are the top end predators. If you stack a bunch of muskie into a lake, like tiger muskie, say you stocked a bunch of them, and you stocked way too many. I don't even know what those stocking numbers are per acre, but if you stock 10 times as many as they normally do, all those muskie would be smaller because the forage population of perch and bass and crappie and all the fish in the lake are limited. So the more muskie you put in there feeding on them, the smaller each individual muskie will be. Where if you understand that and you say, okay, if we back off the numbers of muskie per acre and we stock fewer per acre, that's going to leave more individual forage fish per muskie, and that's going to increase the average size of muskie. So it would depend on what you're going for. Do you want to catch a bunch of numbers of muskie, or do you want to catch a big muskie? So that exact same fish population dynamic is what we're describing when we're talking about bass in our ponds. Yes, Philip says muskie and pike in Canada, Minnesota, and Michigan, and wherever. And it's different, so I get comments about stuff like that all the time too, man. About, well, why don't you have smallmouth bass in these ponds, or why don't you have walleye in these ponds, or yellow perch? It's like, man, yellow perch don't even survive here. Neither do smallmouths. Where I'm at and where you're at are two different kinds of places. So I don't know if it necessarily would call it a complete food chain, but it would definitely be a different food chain. Yeah, I think the gobies and alewives are introductions too, Phil. I think there's been different species of problems with, there's been a major shift in, like, it's great for smallmouth, but not so great for other species of fish that used to be up there that the gobies have displaced, or the alewives. Lots of the Esox fish in Canada. 40-inch pike in the summer. Nice. I like catching pike. They're fun. They're pretty good too. I had a guy show me one time. I was in Minnesota fishing, and I guess a lot of people, like say they're too bony or something to eat or whatever. But this dude was old school, man. He knew exactly. We caught a bunch of northerns, and I mean, they weren't big, they were like as long as your arm. But he filleted. He did some kind of fillet where there wasn't any bones. I didn't notice too many bones, and they were good fish to eat to me, man. I enjoyed eating them. And there was a million lakes with them, that's for sure. Man, we got the pike on that day? We got them on, and I don't think they had tried it before. I tried it because one of them came up and bit the boat prop while I was fishing the back of the boat, and he had a chrome, prop, and it followed the lure that I was fishing back, but when it got to the edge of the boat, it bit the stupid prop. And so I was like, man, forget this. I'll get chrome. So I went and got a chrome and blue rattle trap out of the box and tied it on, and just proceeded to smack those freaking northerns. They acted like they didn't never seen a rattle trap before. Had a fun day with the trap. Yeah, Wham, I would agree. Walleye are solid eaters too, man. I tell you what, Phil, if you want to get on some walleye, I hear over at Carter's Lake coming up here in the springtime, there's a good walleye bite on some crankbaits right before the sun comes up. I think we're going to be trying some of that too, and put some walleye in the freezer. That's solid fisherman, solid solid fish for eating. Midwest, good morning, sir. Midwest is in court, doing something, saving people from something. Yeah, man, northern pike are fun, dude. They were like non-discriminatory biters. They seem like really aggressive, really you have to be careful, they throw their head around, watch those teeth, they try to cut you. They're mean, aggressive fish. And I could imagine a really big one, because we didn't really catch any really big ones. I imagine a really big one is just like a 40-incher. I couldn't even imagine a 40. Whew. That's like a snook, man. I hooked a snook over there in Crystal River in the summertime. It was probably near 40 inches. That thing was a unit. It broke. Whopper ploppers are good up there? Interesting. I could see that. I bet that just that consistency in the because they were smacking the trap just on like like a not even doing anything. Just throw it out, let it go to the bottom, and then slow roll it back on the trap, and they would just destroy it. Add a little pause, just a micro pause in it, and it was over with. The pike were just crushing it. Oh, the Chapo? Yeah, that's that Berkeley bait, isn't it? Yeah, I think I seen Rudd talking about that Chapo. I'd try it. I haven't tried the Chapo. Like I said, man, I'm not much of a bait surface bait dude, but I don't know. This frog is definitely going in play. Have had some good days on the frog down here. 9 pound, 36-inch pike at 6. Holy cow. Yeah. I probably loved fishing ever since then too. 36-inch fish at 9 or at age 6. Age 6. I was catching fish at age 6, but they were bluegill, man. They were little. I might have got a catfish that was pretty good, but it wasn't no 9 pound, 36-inch pike. I can tell you that. Huh. That's interesting, Wham. Wham's saying he can throw a plopper and not get bit and then throw a Chapo and it gets smoked. I wonder what the difference is there. You would think that they'd be pretty equal and similar. Must be the difference in the sound. Vibration, maybe? I don't know. Or could it be just fishing pressure? You think maybe like so many people, they've seen the plopper so many times? Different sound? Interesting. I'll have to try the Chapo in Florida then, because I've tried the plopper down here. They don't like it. They don't eat it. Buzzbait. I got a few buzzbait bites out there before. But like I said, man, these fish are finicky down here. This place is tough. Like, you need to be proud. If you come to Rodman, you come to Central Florida where you got this much fishing pressure with live bait. To me, like, all the fish are trophies, man. Like, every fish I catch out there is a trophy to me. Yeah, I'll go get that Chapo, man. I'm actually going to town today. I got to go to the grocery store. I'll go grab one over at Dick's. That's good too, man, because the Chapo's Berkeley, right? We can support Rudd. We can say we heard it on Rudd, which I did hear it on Rudd. That's not totally untrue. I'm pretty sure he was talking about the Chapo. Push everybody who's cool to push their pages. HD bluegill pattern. All right, noted. Noted. What else, man? I got them on this thing. I don't know if you guys were on here last night, but man, they smacked that guy around at the pond, and that was a Florida pond too. And they really jacked this one off completely offline, the smaller version of that guy. And I only had one in the bag because I left them sitting right there like a dummy. But I think those stunted bass were really on to more of a bite-sized snack. Although once I changed my fishing pattern up, and started yo-yoing it a little bit more, it was ridiculous. There was way too many bass in there. Bone, yeah, bone colors. You know, bone's been the color of everything like since forever on the surface. There was a rule. Somebody told me a rule about that. Do you want I can't remember if it's on the sunny day or the cloudy day, which color is better. I think it's bone on a cloudy day. Oh, Phil's got a good question. What would Rodman be similar to in Georgia as far as fishing pressure? It is different than Lanier in that that's not as persistent. It's not as big as Lanier either. You know, you're looking at something more like the size of Lake Oconee, you know. It's not that big. Like, you can get across it, and I got a 40 horsepower mud motor, and I've driven the length of it in no time, just an hour, maybe a little over. Um, the thing about Rodman is it's like Fork, I guess, or any place that you've ever seen that flooded timber and didn't do anything about the timber before they flooded it. They just decided, yeah, we're going to do flood some timber and make a lake. And then all the trees fell down, and then all of those trees are drifting around like ancient prop destroying driftwood. Um, and the nubs of the trees are all like right at the surface or just subsurface. So there's these nasty hole punching type daggers everywhere. Um, I would say that their plan on how they did it was not great, but it is what it is out there. That's the entire reason why I bought the what I've got. I don't have any trouble back there, but I mean, I've got a boat completely designed to handle in the rivers around here and some intercoastal stuff. So, I'm set for where I live. That purchase was a purchase of necessity, not a purchase of like what I wanted to buy, but kind of what I needed to buy. And I have not been disappointed in it at all. But I don't really know what lake, like, there's not a lake in Georgia. I guess like the big lakes like Lanier have the guide services, but most of the big guide services are going after stripers, I mean, you got a few guys, you got Jimbo, a few guys around, doing bass fishing stuff too, but there's not nearly the guided largemouth bass guiding structure in place in Georgia that there is here. You know what I'm saying? And you can tell when Rodman's hot because, like, just however guides get their information, probably through each other. One buddy tells another buddy tells another buddy. But when the guides roll in here, the fishing's on because you see so many fishing guides. Like I said, you look across the lake, you see 12 boats, and 9 of them are guided trips. Um, so that it's just unique that way. And I don't really know of another lake in Georgia because sometimes there's nobody out there too. Like sometimes you got a lake completely to yourself. Most of the time, like especially out here in the wintertime, right here in this pre-spawn, man, it's great out there. You're practically alone all the time. But no, it's a unique place. It's different than any place I've ever seen, really. Phil's got an. I think I got that muted. Coming through with another Phil question. Striper. Actually hooked a striper on the dam not long ago. I was coming back from the grocery store. I guess I'm allergic to something in the air. I was coming back from Palaka and there was something just busting by the dam. And I had one of I had something on the truck. What did I have in the truck? Oh, it was one of Oliver's OG. It was like a bass pattern, but it was that OG bait that darts when you reel it fast. By Cast OG bait. I had that tied on and put that just into a cloud of terror out there that was going on. And I had whatever I had hooked for quite a second. And whatever I had hooked, I'm pretty sure it was a striper. Was a powerful fish. I ended up getting a couple scales off of it, and they look like striper scales to me. So that's why I say it's pretty sure it's a striper. But I must have fouled it. It must have been like not a good hook in the mouth or something, because I had it real well and then completely gone, and I had scales on the back hooks. So I would guess though that that's probably the teller of things to come around the dam. They do get the stripers running up in there. Midwest has a great question. Do we use any translucent surface lures on sunny days? And absolutely, absolutely. The is it the gunfish was the last one I used. I think is that Lucky Strike top water, almost like a popper fluke hybrid. Remember the old super fluke? Or I'm sorry, what was that bait called? Not a fluke. Why am I drawing a blank on that? I should know that. A Zara spook, not a super fluke. A Zara spook. The old spooks, man. Shoot, chrome spook absolutely gets smoked. Stripers will smoke them too, man. But I think the Zara spook is probably underrated in its fish catching ability. I'm surprised you don't see it more. That's one surface bait that I do have quite a bit of confidence in is the old Zara spook. Midwest says he's got 3 days of single digit highs. No, man, we're going pre-spawn. It was 72 the other day. It's cool out today though. I got my winter gear on. I got my hoodie. Probably 60 today, 58, something like that. It was fun with the striper fill. It was from the bank too, which was cool, you know. Absolutely. A lot of good bank fishing opportunities around here. I found a good place out on the coast. Windy as hell in the mid 40s. Yeah, see, that's 50 degrees and under is where I draw the line on bass fishing. Like, I'll go if it's 45, but it better be a calm 45. I don't want it to be a windy 45. I'm getting too old for that crap, man. Although I will say this, I've noticed a pattern on the best days that I have, or on the days that I catch the best fish anyway. I'm usually slightly uncomfortable. Very rarely do I find myself out on the water, just be like, man, it's a perfect breeze for blowing this kayak right down the lake at the perfect angle in the perfect wind with the perfect wind and the perfect temperature. And I'm perfectly comfortable and everything's going my way that day, except catching any fish. Right. But you reverse that situation and the wind's blowing in a way that somehow has the kayak doing 360s and you can only get like one half of a cast decent down the bank because of that. And then half the paddle breaks and falls off. And then, I don't know, insert any other number of things, Mother Nature, maybe a little bit of drizzle followed by bright sunshine, you know what I mean? And changes in wind direction from every possible, it's coming at you in every direction somehow. And barometric pressure changes, but then all of a sudden, boom, you're in big fish. And that's a pattern that I've noticed in my 40 years of bass fishing. It's the days I'm uncomfortable tend to make me hunker down. It's like, oh, man, I feel like going home. It's like, that's the clue right there. You shouldn't leave. Hey, Tim made it in. What's up, Tim? Yeah, man, the spook. I couldn't believe I couldn't remember the Zara spook, but I could not. Hey, 7 people, man, on Monday, and I'm just trying out StreamYard. Why not? I'll go live every day if people want to watch every day. I figured this would get boring. Yes, I'm learning to highlight stuff. See there, Tim? Look there, we got Tim up there. Got his spook comment highlighted. Look at me go. Still, what's in settings? Oh, better not do that. Oh, there's a virtual background. What's up with that? Can you blur? Look there. Oh, look at that. You just do that. Oh yeah, look at there. You can just do stuff on here. Cool. What I'd like to do is split the screen and like do like Debo does and search on the internet for stuff. Hotkeys, layouts, guess, audio, general. I'm gonna have to watch a YouTube video. That blurred background's kind of cool though. Although you can't see my cool pictures. You wait and have one of those perfect days, Tim? Well, like I said, man, the day I'm having a perfect day where it's like the wind is blowing just right and my kayak's moving, or there's not like so much wind blowing that the trolling motor's failing because I I cheaped out on a trolling motor. I'm saving my money for a good one, which is good God. Talk about problems in the world, trolling motors. Um, But some days the wind blows so hard out there that my trolling motor just is my rig is too big and heavy for the 55 or whatever that thing is on there. I need a 24 volt. I need a little more oomph. Um, and I would really prefer it if it was really quiet. And the one that I really want was on Captain Socrates over on Crystal River. He had that power pole trolling motor. Have you guys seen that thing? Oof. He was saying that he's been catching fish with the trolling motor running, and I mean by fish, I mean tarpon. He said he's had tarpon rolling closer to and hooking tarpon closer to, and just and generally having closer fishing experiences around tarpon, which I guess are really spooky fish, with his power pole trolling motor. I can't think of the name of it. It has a cool name. Yeah, it's a brushless deal. Garmin, Phil's throwing up there the brushless Kraken motor. Yeah, I've heard about that one too. This one's brushless too. Power pole, blah blah blah. Come up with the name. I don't know. I'm not a power pole salesman anyway, so it's cool. But nice motor on his big saltwater boat that we were using trolling around, pinning, flying tarpon with. And I thought, well, if I've got to get a motor for the front of my boat and I want to go to the coast from time to time, I might as well get the one that the tarpon will swim around. You know, that was my thinking on that. Of course, that thing's like $4,000 or $5,000. So you've been fishing with Alex, and he's got the Garmin and he's got the live scope. Yeah, man, I got the live scopes. And I find that it depends on what kind of lake that you're in and what kind of fishing you're doing as to how much that bad boy helps. At least me, anyway. The Garmin's 3,500. Yeah. Maybe I'll get a Garmin. That's cheaper than the Power Pole. But I think that's going to matter. And also, I think that live scope stuff's going to start mattering too, Phil. As these guys absolutely crank on the fish with the live scope. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be the guys that are good with it, you know, as I'm sure Alex is. Hell yeah, I want to live scope the hooch. Why not? Might as well. Might as well. We could totally live scope the hooch. All down there too, man, where we put in and all in through there. I like it on the where you like in deep water, you know, when you get it shooting this way, that's cool, you know. But when you can crank it this way too and see like the front of the boat like that and see all the fish that followed, you know, right at the front of the boat. I like using it that way in Florida more than I do up and down. Now, when I go to the deep water, I'll turn it up and down, get into the timber and look for fish like that. But in the shallow, you know, once you get under about 8 feet, and a lot of this lake is under that, and depending on where you are, but if you go up in that end of it, it's shallow up there. And sometimes I just like watching it, especially when I'm swim bait fishing, just watching it for the follows. So I know, okay, well, I'm not catching them, but there's a follow here or a follow there. Um, I think the biggest problem I've had, excuse me, is sometimes the follows are gar or mudfish or something different than bass, and I'm not good enough with it. Like sometimes you can see them and tell. I was like, okay, that those are gar following, because you literally see them in the water too. But um, yeah, that scout mode. I don't know what it's called. Where you clock it the other way. So Tim says he's got the scope and he's got the scar and the Garmin Force as well, the brushless motor. Yeah, I think that's smart, man. I think like if you're gonna spend money on that stuff, get the quiet stuff, get the stuff that again, especially in public water. I don't think it matters quite as much in private waters, although I have noticed too in private waters, the simple act of putting the boat on, like patterns in what you do. Here's one pattern you can do on private water that changes things up, right? So if you say you have a private pond behind your house and every day you go fishing, so every day you go out onto that boat, you turn the trolling motor on, you bump around in the boat, you get your tackle, you tie your stuff on, you troll around, you put the boat over the top of the fish so they can see you, no matter where you go in the pond, they're watching, and you fish, right? And I've watched guys do this like in real time where it's a brand new pond, right? So they start fishing and they do a lap around, they do, they go fishing and they create a pattern. Maybe they do it on the weekends, maybe they do it in the afternoons, maybe they do it whatever, but they create a pattern for the fish to notice, right? And it doesn't take very long, just a year or two, and their catch results will significantly drop because of the pattern that they've created using the boat going on the pond. The only time the boat's on the pond is when somebody's fishing out of it, and the fish figure it out real quick. They're just like, I want to stay away from that. All right, so flip that around though. How do you use that to your advantage? I've seen guys do this twice actually. Once real well, twice kind of half-assed, but same situation where you have a boat that goes around the pond and goes fishing. But one guy put a directional feeder on his boat, turned it on, and he had one of those fancy trolling motors. He could drive it. So in the afternoons when he got home, he would drive that boat around certain places of the pond, and he wouldn't drive it in the same places every day. And because he knew when the feeder was going to come on. So he created a situation where the feed on the boat started moving around the pond and the feed started coming off the boat. That completely changed the dynamics between his fish and his boat and his pond and guy number one. You follow? And that's how you can measure in a way the differences between what fish can determine and what they can't. You guys are talking about gear. Always more gear to talk about, boys. Always the new stuff. I got a bunch of gear in from G-Crat the other day. I got to get it put up. These are going to come in handy. Oh, look, it's blurring out the bellows. Oh, there we go. Got it. They got a bunch of bellows, the big bellows sticks. He hooked me up. I like those. I like those a lot. All right. So back to this. And then I guess I need to get off here, go get some lunch, run some errands. I'm still going to have to What does touch up my appearance mean? Does it put makeup on me or something? Do I look better now? I hit that button. Kill that. All right, I'm going to take off the touch up. What does it do? Oh, yeah, I get wrinkles again. Got it. Reduce background noise. Don't have to worry about that. Hotkeys, layouts, and guests. Well, boys, I have a lot more to learn. I need to learn how to get guests on here so we can talk about cool things. Phil likes to keep me up to date on everybody who's mishandling the trout in our areas. Yeah, man, I saw that. It's all right. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, it blows me away. I go on, it's how you frame it too, man. You go online, right? And you say, if I had a guppy or goldfish or hell, a trout, any other fish but a largemouth bass. And I say, hey, man, like when you touch this fish, like if you go to work at the pet store, right? Go down to the PetSmart and you're working at the pet store and you're putting, you're getting the fish training, right? They're going to say, don't touch the fish. Use the net. Don't touch them with your hands. Okay, there's a reason for that because your hands are dry. You can touch them, but at the pet store training, they're going to want you to touch it with the net, put it in the bag, don't touch the fish at all, right? Safe fish handling practices, not bass handling practices, just safe fish handling. And a bass is a fish, so it can be included in that group, but I'm just excluding it for now. Safe fish handling practices. And you can get people to listen to you. I'm like, oh wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that about the scales, about the slime code, about this, about that, and people will listen. But as soon as you change it to safe bass handling practices, well, all of a sudden you're an idiot. Everybody already knows that you're allowed to boat flip them on the carpet and kick them in dirt and lay them on the ground and, I don't know, throw them up in trees, whatever it is these people are doing. I don't know why bass are excluded from all other forms of fish in the form of this is how you treat an alive thing. But every once in a while, it bleeds across over to the trout as well. And that's what Phil was pointing out. We kind of poke fun at guys that mishandle fish. And it's always the guys who think they know the most about fish are also the most guilty about mishandling fish. I think that first part has to do with the second part, where the ego kind of gets in the way. And since they already know everything, they can't learn anything. Yeah. I learned a long time ago, they'll never know everything about ponds or fish. But I'll just keep measuring. Well, there's your sign right there, Phil. There's your sign right there. Yeah, 25-year professional tournament bass angler. Again, just kind of how it works. It's funny you mentioned that too, because I don't want to pick on any of those guys, but I will because why not? I go to a job, right? Let's just break it down. This is usually where it happened anyway. Couple private lakes it happened too, but most of the time, my jobs came from homeowners associations, or you'll hear me abbreviated HOA. So the HOAs are a group of people who live in a community that have a lake central to that community. It's public property for the people in the HOA, not for everyone on the planet. So there's a limited group of people who are allowed to use the facility, like a tennis court or a swimming pool. It just happened to be a lake. So that is when you would get a conglomerate of people at the meeting with you, if I went to Midwest and he had a pond in his yard and said, "Hey, Mike, I'm Shan, good to meet you. Let's talk about how you're going to manage your pond." Those ponds are easier to manage because you only have to convince Mike that this is what he needs to do with his pond. HOAs are another beast altogether because you have an entire board of people, not to mention there's going to be a vote within the community on yes or no on whether or not the board of people can even make a decision, right? So you've got a whole completely different level of politics and stuff going on with HOA managed places than you do with just a guy who owns a pond managed place. So what you would see then, to tie this together back to Philip's statement, the 25-year professional bass angler, when you hear that, I've been a tournament bass fisherman for blah, blah, blah years, I know instantly I have a problem. I know instantly that I have a guy who's not going to listen to me. I have a guy who's going to be steeped in what he's seen on TV and in the media, and probably not steeped in what I've learned as a fisheries biologist in the field, because those things kind of tend to counteract one another. You don't have to know how to manage a lake to know how to catch a bass, right? And that's where it's lost in translation right there. So the places that I've had the most trouble and the most not listening are that right there. I've been a bass tournament angler for however many years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the years, doesn't matter. It's relevant. They might as well say, I'm not going to listen to you. You should go home now. That would be a more accurate translation of what that means to me as a pond consultant and as somebody who's consulted for 30 years on fisheries. At this point in my career, I just shut it down right then. I'm not doing business there anymore. I don't have to do business there, and I don't. Midwest is coming through with a question, I believe. Let's see. Do you think largemouth bass conditioned to lures in ponds resets over a winter? I haven't fished this favorite spot since December 8th, extremely late. Probably can't fish it until March. That is a good question, my friend. And yes, I do. There's a lot of studies out there about fish memory. You can see this go either way. And I've seen the studies, and studies are weird that way. You can get conflicting studies that they're both true. And I think that's when we're dealing with lure resistance. I also think we're dealing with something that's not studied very much. So you have studies that are, kind of gapped many years apart. Like maybe you got a study coming from a time when bass were not released much at all compared to a study that's been done more recently where bass are always released. Those are two significant, differences in mentality of, when those studies were conducted, matters, I guess. But I see in ponds where you are fishing real hard and showing them the tackle box, just to, showing them every lure in the box, getting them to bite. And the smaller the pond, the faster this happens with the bass. The bass become very educated very quickly to what's happening to them. And the more you show them, the faster they learn and the harder they become to catch, especially under 5 acres. But you see it, like, it doesn't matter the size of the lake. You see it, but it's especially bad the smaller you get. So the key to do that, when you feel like the fish are lure resistant, when they figured you out, you know what I mean, is let them back off of them. Don't show them the tackle box anymore. Stop reinforcing those ideas. Now, how long does it take for bass to forget, and I think that depends on how long that idea has been reinforced. I think every place is a little bit different, But I would say that you are in the proper time frame of that. You need to give it a good rest. You don't need to catch those fish. You need to leave those fish alone. You also need to, when fishing small ponds, be aware of your patterns, how you're approaching them. Become more of a hunter around your smaller bodies of water, where you're camouflaging yourself and you're hiding yourself around edges of trees, around bushes. Lean up against a tree, conceal your profile more, especially the clearer the water that you're fishing. I think you'll find your success rates go up simply by becoming stealthier. Bass pick up around ponds, bass pick up movements because they can see outside the water when the water's flat. That's another thing you can do too. You can put agitation, put like a fountain, put something that agitates the surface of the water, breaks it up the water, give the bass less advantage. Fish on windy days when there's a ripple on the water, there's much less advantage of seeing you on days like that in smaller bodies of water. Lots of different tips and tricks that you can use to increase your catch rates on ponds versus bigger lakes. But yeah, I think that your idea is right. You can give them some time off, months off, and then go back and try them again. Hey, Josh. Yeah, he's got science and balanced and measurements and proven studying. Yep. Reading proven things is a good idea, man. Proof is good. Yeah. There's no guessing when you measure, and it's not hard once you learn how to measure relative weights. I was talking about, I went live last night too. I wasn't able to get Streamyard to work, but I was talking about it last night. And I'll highlight Josh's comment about measurements. So when you measure, like right now, if I could change one thing about, kind of knocked on the tournament guys, if I could change one thing about the tournament guys, it would be how they're measuring their fish. If they would take into account this standard weights and calculate relative weights. Imagine that. Okay, imagine what the data set that they would have. Okay, so you take the fish up there. Not only are you getting a total weight, but you're getting a weight and a length for each individual fish. Okay, then you can calculate a relative weight. Well, when you do that on a spreadsheet, you have a list of the fish that you caught, the inches, length in inches and the weight. But then you convert that to a relative weight, which is a percentage, which is kind of like a percentage you would get on a report card when you were a kid. A, B, C, like that. Except these percentages are like 100%, 93%, 85%, maybe 125%, right? So the scale isn't like ABC, right? 125% would be an excellent fish. Like we're getting that kind of growth in our pond right now. So 115 to 125 is kind of where I want my fish in a professionally managed situation where I feel like I'm doing my job good. But you're not going to get them all up there. But, if you got a certain percentage of fish up there, I know I'm doing a good job. Then come under that, I'm going to have a certain percentage in that 100 to 115% range. And any one of those fish can jump up and join the higher range too. It's weird, fish are weird that way. But then once I start going under 100%, like at 95%, now I know there's a problem. Once I go under 95, 93, I'm really starting to get worried on my relative weights. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, if I've been doing, say, a lot of harvesting and taking fish out and I start seeing bass going into like the 150% relative weight, it's like, okay, now I've gone too far. Now my bass have too much forage and I'm running the risk of having so much forage that they eat all the bass eggs and kill them. So if I'm in a situation, if I created that situation, or if I see that situation, if maybe naturally the pond brought itself or lake brought itself to that situation, I'd be thinking about stocking bass and bringing 150, 160% relative weight bass back down. I'm having too much. They're feeding too much in there, and they need more bass. So that's kind of how that scale works, or how I would interpret those numbers in the field. So each bass that you weigh and measure becomes like a point, on a graph. Like you put in a dot, boom, put that, put that, put that. So do I have one measurement and a relative weight, or do I have 100 measurements on a relative weight? Do I have 1,000 measurements, all with relative weights? So I'm thinking about all those fish those tournament guys catch all summer, all with a relative weight scale out next to it. So now you have data. You don't just have, oh, look at all the fish that we caught. You have, oh, look, we have 15 fish over 24 inches or at the 24-inch mark that should be a standard weight of 8 that are all 7 pounds, between 6 and 7 pounds. So our fish that should be 8 pounds are a pound underweight, and it would be right up there on the board after the tournament for everybody to look up and see. Oh, look, all the fish between 11 and 14 inches are like 78 to 82% relative weight. But once the fish come above those numbers, like once they grow out of that, for however reason they get out of that stunted situation, they get to 16 inches, now they're 100 to 105% relative weight. And you can see those types of trends if you just measure the fish properly. If you just measure the fish that way and give yourself a frame of reference with the standard weight. So if I had one challenge to give any of the tournament guys, it would be that. Calculate the relative weights of all the bass that you catch for the next season. Write that down and start comparing those numbers year over year, even lake to lake or size class to size class in each individual lake. You will literally be able to see what the population density of that fish, of that 14, 15, 16, 18-inch fish looks like by how much they weigh. You'll know how many fish are in the lake if you know how to look at that data. And Phil's coming in, see, because they've got relative weight charts for trout as well. And the hooch, and I'm sure we're referring to the brown trout, relative weights 80%, right? So now we're dealing with a completely different species of fish in a river, but we're still dealing with the same things, because at 80% relative weight, I am not happy with my bass growth either. They're not growing very well at all. I want my bass growth, for good bass growth, again, 93% or above. 95%, that's 93, 95. That's the low end of what I want my relative weight to be. If my and I've seen most bass are at 80% relative weight, and there's a bunch of reasons why. I mean, we could go another hour about that, but what Phil is saying there is exactly true. Relative weights on trout out west are not 80%. Bug hatches are much higher. Substrates are much healthier. Water quality is much better. Food production is much higher than in the Chattahoochee River. The Chattahoochee River gets scoured with sand and sediment. It's mostly full of sediment. And that's a problem, because the rocks on the bottom, that's where the algae, really important algae, are on the rocks, on the substrate, on the bottom. So if you have sandblasting being done every time it rains, or every time they open that dam up to generate power, you have the scouring of that rock by sand. That kills the algae, and that kills the base of the food chain for the stream. And that's a problem. A big, big problem. They need to take big sections of the Chattahoochee River and dredge it and get all that substrate, all that sand, all that stuff that got from all that development from all those years needs to come out of that river. And it would change the environment. It would change the amount of bugs that can live there. It would change the amount of trout that can live there. but you're going to have to go get money to dredge it. And that's where the problems lie. All those fancy developers that put all that sub sand and silt in that stream are not going to give you any money to take it back out. Unfortunately. Well, boys, that was my first successful StreamYard test. I'm going to have to go back on YouTube and look on how to add someone to it. I think that must be done before I start. And I did another 2 hours on YouTube. So, hey, why not? But I'm going to jump off. I appreciate you boys and get back to work. Do your things. I'll be back end of the week. I don't know, weekend, sometime Sunday afternoon at 12. I got a lot of good viewer hours and I can use a lot of good viewer hours. So anyway, at an hour 55, I'm going to cut this one off. Thanks, guys. Later on, Phil, man. Appreciate you. Okay, in stream, yes.